If you're seeing and hearing me, give me that thumbs up. I'm going to go ahead and check real quick, make sure we are live everywhere before we get going. Extra special guest tonight that's going to tell us about a really awesome automated system. But let's see. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Looks like we are good on YouTube. Okay, we are good on YouTube. Hear me? Let me check Facebook. 10 seconds, y'all. 10 seconds. You know how it goes. Got to make sure we are live on Facebook. Good. All right. Well, then. Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I hope your week was fabulous. I hope your Wednesday is going swell. Hope your seahorses are swimming swimmily. I'm losing words to use. But I hope everything is going great for you. Hope your tanks are great. Hey, Grizz Aquatics. Hey, everyone in the comments, just to let you know, we have a special guest today who's going to share his system with us. I will check all of your questions and comments after he is done, and we can ask him all sorts of questions and talk about whatever you want when he's done. However, I would love to introduce today our special guest, Jerry Gunn. Welcome, Jerry. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
What were you saying?
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. And before we get into your awesome invention slash system, I just wanted to ask really quickly, what got you interested in seahorses? What got you into the hobby?
Well, I was one of those people back when I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old that ordered seahorses from Florida, the Florida Seahorse Company. And of course, they came and they had babies, and you put the brine shrimp cysts right in the tank, and then in 3 weeks they were all dead. And unfortunately, I didn't know why, and I didn't know how to keep fish. I didn't know anything about changing water, the whole 9 yards. The same thing you read in all of the other people's experiences. And then when my daughter was about 9 years old, I said, let's order seahorses. And this was in the 80s, so you could still do that from probably the same place. And the exact same thing happened. We didn't know how to do it, but they were cute, and And then I went on with my life and went through 3 careers. And at that point, I retired, and I said, I think I want to do seahorses again, and let's see how to do it right this time. And so I started with the Dwarf seahorses, and I tried to develop. I'm a very lazy person. I don't like to do the same thing over and over. I like to develop new things and build new things and invent things, that type of thing. And I don't like the drudgery of having to hatch out shrimp, Artemia, daily, and then feed them every 3 or 4 times a day. So I said, there's got to be a better way. And so I had automated telescopes for NASA before, and I knew about servos and robotics, that type of thing. So kind of just fit in with how to do it. And I tried 3 or 4 different tanks. Most of them were colossal failures. The last one actually works because it's the highest tech of all of them. I tried to do the minimum tech and still make it work, and they really did not work. And this one seems to work pretty well. The Seahorse has been in it for about 18 months. I really don't make any attempt to raise the fry at this point, so maybe 1 or 2 will survive in the tank because the Artemia are way too big for these fry, because they actually feed and get larger, and then they're fed to the adults. But I just had 2 new births of seahorse fry, and so I've got about 30 in a 2.5 gallon that are about, I would say, about 1 inch long. And I've never done it before, but I just read how to do it, and it seems like what I'm doing is correct. Probably put them in the main tank when they're maybe 2 or 3 months old. I don't know. We'll see. If they're big enough, I can tell if they're going to eat the larger Artemia. I can put the small Artemia in the tank, but I don't like to flood it with thousands and thousands and thousands of Artemia.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I plan to ask is what kind of cleanup you have to do with the automated. But not getting ahead of myself, with the what gave you the, obviously you just covered what gave you the idea for the automated system, and you covered that it took you 3 tries to get it right. But once you got it right, you mentioned that it's the most technical. Or if you're going to cover that in all the technicalities, okay, then I won't even ask the question. How about you guys, we just let Jerry share his automated system, and then we can ask him questions afterwards. Sound good to you, Jerry?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead and screen share. I'm going to put me out of here and mute myself, and we'll be back once you're done.
Okay, what you're looking at, uh, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what you're looking at is the final version of the automated aquarium. This is a 20-gallon tank, and it's actually split horizontally into two partitions. And you notice it's only filled from the bottom to about halfway up. It holds about 5 gallons, all right? And it's on a bachelor's chest, which is from my youth. I just refinished it, painted it black, redid the top, and it's got room under the bottom for all kinds of equipment. And I will show that picture here. Of course, it didn't go to the right place when I did it, but I will find it. Okay, here's a picture of the door with the doors open. So what you see on the right is a 5-gallon bucket that's for wastewater. All right. There's a 2.5-gallon aquarium here that has a magnetic stir in there. That purple thing is a magnetic stir. And then there's a jar that I keep the Artemia food in. And this is a 5-gallon aquarium on this side, on the left side, which has the fresh water that is pumped into the main tank. Okay. And then there's a J-bow 4-channel dosing pump sitting on top of the other tank. And that is the main guts of the picture of the system. So I will start with some other things here in a second. All right, so I'm told you about the basic concept and how it's divided. Dwarf seahorses, as we all know, are kind of difficult to keep because you've got to hatch out live food for them. And unattended aquarium, you need to enrich the Artemia too, because the first tank that I built, I didn't enrich the Artemia. And of course, the seahorses did not do well. They stayed alive for a while, but they just were not healthy. They were not vivacious. They didn't mate after a while, that type of thing. So I concocted this idea of trying to raise the Artemia and enrich them in an automatic tank, so I didn't have to feed them and go through all the mess that we know. If you've done this before, you know it's quite a project. Okay, the goal was to develop a dwarf seahorse aquarium capable of 7 to 10 days of unattended automatic operation. And as you see up here, I did have a 9-day test when I went on vacation to the Outer Banks down in North Carolina, and it worked great. I could check in on it. I put an Echo Show up against the front of the aquarium, and I could actually watch video of the seahorses, and I could see that there was food, plenty of food in there for them every day. So it worked pretty well. It didn't get very dirty. I cut back on the food a little bit and cut back on the fresh water a little bit to last 9 days, but it actually worked better than I thought it would. Okay, so when I designed this system, there were some problems that needed to be solved. Of course, the first one is transferring the Artemia from the back compartment to the front compartment in a controlled manner, in a measured way, so you didn't get too many and not enough sometimes. So the solution was to design a moving sieve, which was designed using our Arduino microcontroller and a small servo motor. And it essentially looks like this. All right. So the box right here, the little gray box, has got the servo motor in it, and it's also got an Arduino microcontroller. This is the power supply to the Arduino microcontroller in the servo. And this is a typical 120, well, this is 180 micron sieve. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger. And so it can go, it travels through a range of 300 degrees. So it'll go back down into the water in the enrichment tank and then move forward and into the display tank and then go back up. And so when you apply power to this, it does that. So if you turn the power on and off, okay, you can initiate the cycle. And so I plug this into an internet power strip, which can run from my phone. And it also is programmable, so I can program it to feed as many times a day as I want. So I just have it programmed. I think right now I got quite a few seahorses, so I think I have it going 5 times a day. It feeds them 5 times a day enriched Artemia. Okay, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but there's actually a video. And if the video works fine, we'll see what happens. It might take a second to load. We will see here because it's probably got to download it from the cloud. Can you see that okay? Yes.
Folks, Jerry's not talking to himself. I am just muting myself when while he's talking, but I told
Hey,
him we
Ray,
could
how
hear
are
him.
you?
Not too bad. I posted the link on the YouTube there, but for some reason it comes up because my nickname Ray J
Folks,
is.
Jerry's not talking to himself. I am just muting myself when while he's talking, but I told him we could hear him.
Not too bad.
Okay, so that's
Yeah, just. I'm trying to figure out how to get back my nickname Ray J is. This thing took over my whole. Oh, there it is. Exit.
okay. Okay, so that's the operation of the sieve, and I just built this little frame out of aluminum, and it just hangs off the lip of the aquarium. So you can take this whole thing out really easy when you want to do any cleaning or anything. The whole thing just comes out, so it's pretty easy. Okay, let's go back to the second problem that needed to be solved. So that solved that problem pretty well. Avoid excessive bacterial growth in the rear compartment. That's kind of a tough one because you've got food in there for, you know, a couple of weeks, and of course bacteria will grow and bad things can happen. So one of my solutions was to raise the salinity to 70 parts per thousand. I've tried 100 parts per thousand. I've tried 120 parts per thousand. The Artemia do just fine. The bacteria, I talked to my daughter, she's a microbiologist, and she says, well, if you increase the salinity, what's going to happen is the bacteria are going to spend a lot of their energy instead of reproducing into eliminating the salt from their bodies. And they will not die, probably. Some of them will, but there's certain kinds that don't. But it will severely reduce their growth. So you'll be able to run it longer with the enriched food in there before you have to change the water. And that's what I've found. I've got about 2 or 3 weeks, pretty close to 3 weeks before some of the bacteria start to affect the growth on the Artemia. I know there's a lot of people that will say, well, you shouldn't have all this bacteria, I think, in the Artemia when you feed them to the seahorses, and I agree that that's probably the case, but it's been working great for 18 months now, and I haven't had any problem with that type of situation. So the high salinity water is one solution. I just tried an experiment starting 3 weeks ago. I changed the salinity to the standard 35 parts per thousand, and I dosed the rear compartment with about 2 milliliters of hydrogen peroxide every 2 hours. All right, and that's been running for 2 weeks now. The water in the rear compartment is completely clear, which is a really good sign. And the Artemia are growing like they never have before. So I'm kind of thinking that that might be an alternate to the problem. And I just, 3 weeks is okay. I don't like to clean every 3 weeks. I'd like to make it a month, but beggars can't be choosers sometimes when you're doing things like this. So that's a possibility that may work really well. We'll see. So that's a test in progress. So hatching and enriching and feeding Artemia in the rear compartment and avoiding overfeeding, which causes water quality problems. We talked a little bit about that. That was a problem that needed to be solved. So I pump small amounts of food multiple times a day into that rear compartment where the Artemia are growing and hatching using a programmable peristaltic pump that you saw at the original first picture, and a magnetic stirrer, which stirs the enrichment up so it doesn't all settle to the bottom. And so that's all on a timer, and that seems to work really, really well. Okay, of course, I don't have a sump and I don't have a protein skimmer. There's no way. All I have is a biological filter of CChem matrix on a real small compartment that hangs into the rear compartment. I'll show you that later, which takes care of the nitrates and the nitrites, the ammonia, and that in the front compartment. But that doesn't help the protein. And as we know, that can be a real problem with algae growth and water quality. So I make some pretty good water changes. It's pretty much probably, I would say 60 to 80% a week. So the water has never really been a problem with that. I'm sure that, you know, the more you put in there, the better, but and it's such a small tank, it's only 5 gallons. And it really, the cost to replace that water even a couple times a week is pretty minimal compared to some of you people with the huge tanks. Okay, so my solution is to put at least 400 milliliters of fresh water, 28 to 32 parts per thousand into the front compartment about 4 times a day. All right. The excess water flows over to the compartment divider into the rear compartment. So the Artemia are also getting their water replaced with water from the front compartment. And then it goes down an overflow that goes out of the rear compartment into that big blue bucket you saw on the right side of the rear. Okay, so the fifth thing that needed to be solved, the biological filter to remove ammonia nitrites and nitrates. That was pretty easy and it seems to work well. I put a small hang-on back filter, which actually doesn't hang on the back of the aquarium, but hangs from the front compartment into the rear compartment. All right. About 10 to 12 liters per hour go from the front compartment, pump through the filter and back into the front compartment. That's not much water, but I find out that it works fine. It's kind of a slow rate through that biological filter, which seems to work. Okay, number 6. Adequate water aeration and easily controllable circulation velocity. I found that dwarfs don't chase their food down. They sit there and they hang on to something all day long. And if they can reach the food, they do fine. And if they can't reach the food or it's going too fast, they starve to death. So that was important to get that flow just right. So the divider that you saw going left to right horizontally across that aquarium is actually, there's an integrated riser tube. I will show you a picture of that. Okay, so this is the divider. You're looking at the end of it. It goes the whole width of the aquarium. And this is a PVC pipe and a couple of caps and headers on it. And the inlet is right here. And then there's an air stone and a small pump down here. So the bubbles go up here and the water comes out here. And I put this diverter on so it points it down the length of the tank. So I get a nice circular flow from the top all around in a big circle in the tank. And it's really easy to adjust the flow because all I have to do is turn the air up or down and I can get the exact flow that I need depending on if I have smaller ones and smaller seahorses there or larger seahorses. Here's another picture of it a little bit better. Okay, so this would be the divider and that's the intake here and this is the outtake on the top. Okay. All right, and I can do the overflow here since I'm already here. So I drilled the tank and I put the overflow in the rear compartment. I actually cut this part off. I thought that taking the Artemia from the bottom, they would hang around at the top where there's a lot of light since Artemia like light. That didn't appear to be the case, so I just cut this off right here and I have it just an overflow that sticks straight up and goes down into that blue bucket. Okay, where are we? We are the aeration and the controllable velocity. Okay, easy to clean systems. Pretty much everything comes out of the rear compartment and the front compartment. There's not much to clean around, so you can take everything out, you know, run your wand down the walls and clean it. You can empty the water from the rear compartment completely, and the divider does not flex or move because it's 1/2-inch PVC. I tried 1/4 inch and I got a big bow in it, so that didn't work too well. So I need this big piece of 1/2-inch PVC that I drill holes in for the circulation, and then there's a cutout. We will go down to, let's see, you saw the, hang on just one second. Let's see if we can find a better picture of the divider. Well, I guess I don't have a better picture of that divider, but let's look at this picture. The divider is sitting left to right in the tank here, and it's about 4 or 5 inches below the top of the aquarium here. Then it cuts down more so the sieve can operate. And then there's a little overflow down under this gray box that lets the water flow from the front to the back tank. And then here's the overflow over here. So the water gets, and it's lower. the water level in the back is lower than the front, so you never get water flowing from the back into the front. All right, okay. Lighting control, I simply use a LED panel. It's multicolored. I can have all kinds of cool colors in there if I want. I usually set it on a really nice looking color. And there's the internet power strip, which controls the feeding cycle. It also controls the day and night cycle. And I don't think I put it in here, but I don't have any temperature control in the system. Our house is usually about 71 degrees, winter or summer. So that's perfect. The aquarium is usually 71 to 73 degrees for the seahorses. So I don't have to do anything in regards to controlling the temperature. Other people might have a problem and they have to do something with that. Okay, this system also has a Artemia recycler, which means I don't have to hatch many or use many Artemia cysts. So as I said before, at the bottom of that riser pipe is a very small pump that goes down in there, and it pumps just maybe a half a liter an hour, and it goes into this little device. This is my biological filter, and the bottom of this is a breeder box, I think made by Marina, and I just used it as a filter. And so I hang it on the divider into the rear tank, and I have a little pump that pumps water through a tube, goes across here, and this is a sieve, 180 micron sieve. And so that pump intercepts some of the water from the front tank and pumps it into the sieve, and the sieve collects the Artemia. And then there is a little pump that sits in here. I got another picture of it somewhere else. So the pump that sits in here that pumps, I think 4 times a day, what is in here with the Artemia and the water into the rear tank again. So the Artemia can eat and be enriched and be reused back into the front compartment. So that was a really good idea that I didn't think would work very well, but it does work very well. It enables the Artemia to get bigger. And the seahorses, especially the adults, the larger adults, really go after the Artemia that are 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters long. They really like those. They will leave their perch sometimes to go get those, which is kind of interesting for dwarfs. Okay. Replenishment of newly hatched Artemia into the system. That can be done several ways. I've tried 3 different ways and they all work. Okay, I can put decapped, I always use a decapped cyst, by the way. I never use non-decapped cyst. Too much problems with bacteria, that kind of thing. I'd rather have them sterile going in to not have any issues. I can either add them to the food, the enrichment food, so they actually get, every time that the food is pumped from the bottle under the aquarium into the back tank, it gets cysts to hatch out. So there's a constant supply of cysts being hatched out. Now in the high salinity environment, it takes about 3 days before they hatch. But if you're doing it constantly, you don't have to do that. I can also, I also put a little box into the pump on the left side of that little box that hatches out. I have to add them manually, and that works also. Or you can just dump some newly hatched Artemia into the rear compartment and they do just fine. So if you want to hatch them out as needed, that works fine. But if you're going to go away, obviously you have to have a way to go on vacation. You have to have a way to keep them hatching, and that seems to work just fine, putting them in the enrichment. I don't put them in the enrichment when I'm home, but I just feel like I can control the amount of Artemia better manually than that way. All right, but that's when you go away on vacation, that's what you would do. Okay, we saw that the, let's see. I wanted to limit the water volume to 5 gallons to keep the Artemia density high. I think a lot of people make the mistake of having way too big an aquarium for dwarfs, and they have to add way too much food. I've raised the little batch of fry. I used a cottage cheese cup for the first 2 weeks, and they grow to about half an inch to about 3/4 of an inch. Then I put them in the 2.5-gallon aquarium, and they are doing just fine with that. And I can keep the density really high for them. And I think I've only lost 5 fry out of about 30, which is not too bad from what I read. All of a sudden, 5 of them just stopped eating and they died. I don't know why that happened, but they might have been smaller ones when they started out. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty happy with the results so far. Okay, to design the aquarium to be aesthetically pleasing. Well, you can see how it looks. It doesn't look great, but it's small. It's easy to clean, that kind of thing. And it looks okay. It doesn't, I do the bare bottom thing because I've read a lot about it. I tried some gravel on the bottom. It was a kind of a disaster in the first tanks. And I just decided with this tank, I could probably put stuff in it and gravel maybe, but I think that since I want minimum maintenance, I only maintain it once a week right now. I vacuum the rear and the bottom and the front bottom once a week. That's it. And it seems to be working just fine. I could do it more, obviously, if I wanted it pristine, but I think with those big water changes, it keeps the water in pretty good shape. And that's for a 5-gallon tank. That I think water changes are the answer. The protein skimmer would be just way overkill for a small tank like that. The biological filtration I went over, I use CQM matrix and that little hang-on filter, and I maintain the salinity of the back tank. 50 to 100 really is what I've been doing. I didn't see much difference in the 50 or the 100, but the hydrogen peroxide that I'm thinking about using or actually testing right now, I think is a better choice if it works. We'll see what happens. Okay, some comments. The aquarium's been in operation since August 2019. I put saltwater mollies in there to begin with to make sure it worked before I ordered my seahorses. I ordered the seahorses, I think it was from Alyssa in October 2019. They've all done well. I've had a couple deaths. Don't know why. I put them under the microscope. I could see nothing wrong with them. I had a couple deaths in November and December, but the seahorses are probably 1.5 years old by that time because they were probably at least 6 months old when I got them because they were not that small. As I told you, I haven't really done anything with fry except for 3 weeks ago when I started to collect the fry and put them in a separate tank. The servo motor action became jerky. The servo motor was removed and replaced. I think the gear wore out. So this one has lasted, after 6 months, it kind of gave up the ghost a little bit. This one, I put another one in. It's lasted about 10 months with no signs of having a problem. All right, so it's a mechanical system. You're going to have to replace the parts. There's a lot of wear and tear on some of these things, and it's a small servo, so I have several of those in stock in case I need them. Okay, I think I went over number 4 about how I put cysts into the aquarium. We'll skip to number 5. There is a failure mode, which the little pump that pumps from the front to the rear, if that would stick on and not turn off, it would pump most of the water from the front tank to the rear tank into the big blue bucket, which would overflow onto the floor, which is not a good thing, as you probably know. So I put just a simple float switch in series with that pump. And if the water gets lower than about 2 inches from the top, it will shut off. So that's just a safety feature. Okay, the biggest issue I had in the whole system was adding the correct amount of the enrichment to the rear compartment. As you know, Artemia eat that enrichment. They also grow with that enrichment, and they eat more when they're larger than when they're small. So it was a delicate balance between the amount of enrichment I put in. I tried using one of those Seshi discs at the bottom. I'd look down and I'd see if I could see it, and I'd add enrichment. But I wanted to make this automated, so I wanted to be able to go away on a trip, and that really wasn't a very good solution. So what I did was I designed a turbidity measurement system, all right, that is used to control the amount of enrichment that goes into that rear compartment. What it does is it takes a laser diode and it fires through the glass on one side of the rear compartment at the bottom, and there's a receiver on the other end, and if it's really clear, that laser goes all the way through and turns on, enables the pump to run. Otherwise, it says don't run. So at feeding time, the laser can actually turn off the feeding cycle. All right. So I've got controls and little potentiometer on there that I can control the turbidity that rear compartment gets, because it's loaded with big Artemia right now, and they eat a lot. So it'll feed, and then an hour later, it'll be clear. So the next time the feeding cycle comes up, it'll add the maximum amount. But if the Artemia are small, you don't want to add nearly as much enrichment because it'll be too cloudy, and then you would invite bacterial growth, all those problems. So that has been the biggest success I've had, because I really don't have to do that anymore. I don't even have to look at how much enrichment. I just have to keep the little mason jar about half full of food. That's the other thing I should talk about, because the enrichment, as you know, is full of all kinds of energy producing fats for bacteria. All right, and I don't sterilize the enrichment. So what I do is I make my enrichment with 100% saturated brine. All right, and I've left a jar of that stuff out for a month at room temperature, and I use the smell test when that stuff goes bad. Some of that stuff smells pretty rank when it starts to go bad. It smells the same after a month that it does when you first make it, and it does not go bad. Ray and I have been through this a little bit, and it seems to work really well. I've not had any problem with that going bad or smelling or strange or anything. So I make my enrichment, instead of using fresh water or seawater, I take saturated salt water, brine solution, is totally saturated, put it in the blender, mix it up, put it in a half-gallon jug, put it in the fridge, and then just pour it into the enrichment jar when I need it. I use that same food for any other enrichment I would do, like for the fry, that kind of thing. So that keeps the enrichment from going bad or stale or actually degrading. So it seems to work pretty well. If it didn't work, the seahorses probably would have died by now, is the way I figure it. I don't have a biological lab to measure if that brine affects the food in any way, but I know that everybody knows I had ham for dinner last night. Ham is a fatty food. It's preserved with salt. Fats are preserved very well with salt, and there's a lot of fats in our enrichment because the DHA and the EPA are essentially fatty amino acids, fatty acids. If you can preserve those, as long as the smaller microorganisms, the diatoms, the algae that are in the enrichment, it seems to work really well. You would think it would settle out. That's why I put the magnetic stirrer at the bottom of the jar, sits on it. So every time that the feeder cycle turns on, it stirs it up really well, goes really fast, and gets a nice whirlpool in there. So that seems to work good. Okay, cleaning duties. I told you I cleaned about every week. I have to stock the overflow bucket, or I empty the overflow bucket. I fill the new seawater tank. I don't do buffer anymore. Ray said that was probably a waste of time, and I took it off, and I still have solid 8.1 in the front tank and 7.9 to 8.1 in the rear tank. So that's not a problem for either the Artemia or the seahorses. I fill the enrichment container, and I used to pump the brine into the rear compartment with a doser pump to maintain the high salinity. But since I switched to the hydrogen peroxide, I removed that also. So that is not. So there's only really three things that get pumped from the supplies into the aquarium. So it's getting simpler, actually, instead of more complicated. So I cleaned the front and the rear compartment. I made some nice little wands out of expanded PVC to fit any places I couldn't get to. They're very, very nice and handy. I replaced the water in the rear compartment totally every 3 weeks. With the new hydrogen peroxide treatment, I don't know what I'm going to have to do. It's been 2 weeks, and it's like clear as a bell. So maybe I don't have to do that anymore. We'll see. Because the water flows from the front compartment into the rear compartment, so it actually gets replaced in both compartments. So it'd be great if I didn't have to clean or change the water in the front or the back. But I think vacuuming the bottom is going to be something you just have to do, because there is excrement and dead Artemia, and there's excrement from the seahorses in the front, so you might as well just vacuum the front and the back when you need to. The other thing I tried was I would hang a pretty good flow HOB filter on the front of the display tank, and that mixed up the water and and clean some of it off, but you still need to get in there with a wand to clean the glass and the backdrop every once in a while. So, and clean the plants. So, you know, if you're going to have an aquarium, you're going to have to clean it. I don't think the self-cleaning aquarium is going to be in the future from development. There's an air stone in the back that provides aeration for the Artemia. And we can either go to questions that have already been asked, like on Reef to Reef, questions were submitted, and I'm a member of a couple of Seahorse forums, and people ask questions. And some of them probably are not worth going over. I've explained most of that to you now, the turbidity sensor, Artemia recycler, the riser tube. So I think that is mostly it. If you've got any questions.
Well, first of all,
now would be the time.
That was awesome. Seriously awesome. You can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Okay. And everybody out there can hear me too, right? Let me get this back to the correct sizing here so Jerry doesn't have to feel uncomfortable and be huge. Hang on one second, guys. And if we have, as we ask questions, he can always share pictures again or whatever, because I was going to say some of my questions, I've been writing them down, and they might repeat something you went over, but it was just, you know, it was a lot of information, which is great, and we love it, but I'm going to let everybody, I'm sorry, I'm trying to adjust you real quick. Okay, now we're back to the same screen here, and I'm going to make you not big anymore. Okay, now we're all here. First off, I just want to say I think it's so cool that you invented and did this. Oh, wait, I forgot to turn myself back on. All right. Hi, here I am. Okay. Anyways, I just think it's so cool that you did invent this and made this work and have shared your trials and errors. And I think it's also cool that, you know, you've worked with Ray and that you guys figured out new things that would work. I have a bunch of questions written down, but Holly, what questions do you have first off?
I just want to say that was pretty amazing. That's a pretty amazing thing. I'm not that tech savvy, so I don't see myself doing all those little electronic components and things, but I'm very impressed by it all. I have to say, I wish we could do that for our big seahorses.
I'm going to get to the comment section. We were talking big seahorses in the comment section while he was talking. But that actually was one of my first questions, and we'll jump around here. But Jerry, in your link that Ray shares also, that provides the information you just went over, does it tell you like exactly the materials needed and all of that and how to put things together, or is that too much?
It does not really go into any specifics on building it. You know, the pictures are kind of worth 1,000 words.
Right.
It was mostly, you know, getting the systems together. They're pretty basic. It's not that complicated. The only complex part maybe, and it's really not very complex, is building that moving sieve. And it's really, I mean, probably $50 at the most for that sieve. And the rest of it is typical aquarium parts. Mm-hmm. I think I totaled up everything you would need, including the tank, the PVC, everything. It's probably around $400 to $500 for everything. So, you know, as I said, you can spend $250 to buy 10 seahorses, and the infrastructure, if you skimp on the infrastructure on any tank, that's the mistake. I mean, you need to probably pay more for the infrastructure than you do the animals, because the animals aren't going to make it if you don't do the infrastructure right. And it's not that expensive. $500. I went to the aquarium store, and some tanks cost $400, $500, $600 for, you know, big tanks. So it's really not that bad. As I say, most of the stuff is, except for the sieve and the hanger, were standard stuff you buy at Lowe's or order off Amazon. So it's really not, it really wasn't that hard.
Well, I do agree with everything you just said. However, I also agree with Holly. I was watching and I was like, oh, whoa, wait. Because, you know, some of us are just a little less tech savvy. I absolutely believe and agree that it's easy once you actually look at the pictures and figure it out, but just it was a lot of information, which we appreciate. And now we're going to task you, for those of us that are a little on the tech side, to to someday when you have time, right, give us an instructional. But anyways, no, I
Kelly,
yes, Ray.
for what it's worth, I consider myself pretty handy at coming down with things to solve problems and so on. But I'll tell you, it took an awful lot of emails back and forth with Jerry for me to understand how he accomplished it. There's no way in the world I could have done it.
Right, and he sits there saying,
I'm
"Oh, it's
so
easy."
envious.
What, Ray? Sorry, I interrupted.
I'm so envious.
I know he's a genius for sure. So I'll just jump into my questions, I guess, and I will look in the comments in just a second, guys. I know you had a few. And like I said, a lot of it, when I rewatch this later, I'll be like, oh, right, I get it. But I was trying to, do all the same things while we were streaming. So if my questions you've already answered, I apologize. Okay, I'm just going to go with it. All right, so I know you said you clean the tank weekly, and I have another question about peroxide. You explained a lot about how that's affecting. But when you clean the tank weekly, I just wanted to stress, when you say cleaning the tank, does that mean wiping down the sides and cleaning the containers? Or what does cleaning the tank weekly mean?
Okay, the front compartment, I vacuum the bottom,
Okay.
and then I take a wand and I clean the inside of the divider and the glass. And that's pretty much, there's some plants in there, some plastic plants. I have an exchange program. I just put new plastic plants in, take the old ones out, and put the other ones in. So that's easy thing to do. That's it for the front. All right. The rear compartment, I remove the sieve, which comes right out. All right. It's really easy to get out. And I remove that little hang-on back filter. It just pulls right out, and put it in a bowl. And then I siphon the bottom of the tank. And then I put all that stuff back. It takes maybe 10 minutes to do that. All right. And then I add a little bit of makeup water. So I add water to the front tank with a watering can, essentially, plastic watering can. And it flows over into the back to refill the maybe 1 or 2 inches of water that I've lost in the front and the back. All right. And then about every 3 weeks, I siphon all of the water out of the back tank and swish it around so I get all the detritus off the bottom. And then I use just a wand with a cleaning pad on it to go all the way around it. And then I fill it back up with water, and I'm done.
Gotcha.
So that's pretty much it.
And Mermaid's Reef said, just cover the front of the tank with a giant magnifying glass. Good to go. Funny. Okay.
What the divider do you use? What is the material? Is it glass or PVC or?
It's 1/2 inch PVC.
Okay.
Holly takes notes.
You just take a saw and you cut out those places and cut it just to the right length, and then I just cemented it in with aquarium cement. And it doesn't move, it doesn't flex. I tried a 1/4 inch. It flexed too much. I was afraid it was going to break. So glass would work also, but cutting slots out of glass isn't something that I had to do. So I just used a saw and cut the slots out that I needed.
Very cool.
Did you have another one, Holly?
No, I was just thinking about the going, is it just because we're working on my grow out tank, like what kind of things to use. So the aquarium cement, you glued it then on 3 sides, right? The bottom and both the sides?
Correct, because I wanted a good seal between the front and the back.
So no water gets in other than over the top.
Yeah, otherwise it wouldn't flow over from the front tank to the rear tank. I couldn't have a higher water level in the front than the rear. I just didn't want any possibility of that enrichment water getting into the display tank.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. Thank you.
Okay, and my questions are jumping around because I was just taking notes while you were talking. And again, you may have covered this really detailed, but I was trying to get it a little slower. But you said you were talking about 4 times a day adding fresh water. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, number 1, could that be automated in any way? And number 2, what about when you go on vacation?
Okay, that is automated now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It goes through the doser pump. All right, the doser pump, it probably puts I think I put like 100 milliliters 12 times a day in or something like that. I forget the exact number. I changed it, and I reduce, if I go away on a trip, then I reduce it to about, so it only uses 5 gallons in the amount of time I'm going to be gone.
Nice. Okay. And I thought you said that. I just missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, I turn it up when I'm home because I put about 3.5 gallons, I think, of water in the reservoir twice a week. So I'm running about 6 gallons a week through it.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
All right. And then I'm reading my own notes here. The overflow takes excess artemia and does what? Does it remove it or redistribute? Does that question even make sense? The overflow takes excess artemia. You were talking and you said the overflow, you were talking about the overflow and how you thought they would be all at the top because of the light.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, I cut that U-shaped tube out completely, and this comes up, and I put a cap on it that has a little filter on it,
okay.
so the artemia don't go through there. And if that filter gets clogged up, there's a couple holes that are a little bit higher as an overflow. And if those got clogged up, it would go over the top of the pipe. So there's two fail safes on that system. But it did help just putting, and the water goes into the front so slowly that the artemia don't get pushed through that piece of sieve that's on the little pipe. But it's open on top. It can never be blocked. So there's no. I've had a couple. I've had a couple bad dreams, I guess, about you wake up in the morning and there's water all over the floor. I've heard people on the forums say that stuff, and I want to make sure I designed this so that would never happen. I had a little water one time because I forgot to empty the overflow bucket, and it filled clear to the top, and I just had a little water until I noticed. So every time you add water, you put an empty bucket there.
Gotcha.
And if you always do that, you never have a problem.
So like
the reservoir holds less than the bucket does, so you can never overflow it.
That's awesome. I love all the fail safes. That's one of the things that I think is really excellent about the design. And so if you were going on vacation, you just make sure to do what you just said, but right before you go.
Right.
Okay. And I just wrote, I'm so excited to hear that between you and Ray chatting and whoever else that you decided to try peroxide, because we figured out with, I'm more larger seahorses, but we figured out how much peroxide can be used in the tanks, in the hatcheries, and everything to make such a huge difference. So I definitely want updates on how the peroxide experimenting goes.
I want to give you a little bit of credit because I think it was Dan that was talking about peroxide like 3 weeks ago, and I said, I should really try that. And so I got on Amazon, and I said, well, he bought the 35%, which is hazardous material essentially,
Right.
and I got on there and I calculated how much it would cost me to buy and ship it to my house, and it was like $70. And so I got on Amazon, and I had a case of liter bottles of 3% hydrogen peroxide delivered to my house for $10.
Yep.
And so I figure the amount of hydrogen peroxide I'm going to put in that tank, I actually took the brown bottle, I drilled a hole in the top, I put the tubing down into it, and that will last a month.
Nice.
So it's $1
Right.
a month for the peroxide.
I mean, and
then
Dan is always going to say go for the 35%, only because I don't even actually remember exactly. Ray, is it because of the whatever else is in it?
It's the most, no, there's shouldn't be anything else in it other than the stuff that stabilizes, but basically it's the most economical way to buy it for an operation his size.
Okay, so it's just because he's big.
The stuff that I buy is 25%. I buy it from a chemical company here in London, but nobody around has the 35%. But I buy it in 5-gallon carb oils.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I've had to take that shortcut too, and had to use the 3 or whatever percent. I just wondered. Go ahead, Jerry.
Check out Amazon, because I did the calculations on the concentrations, and it's actually at this point it's cheaper to buy the 3% from Amazon at $10 a case than it is to buy the other and dilute it. So it's it's kind of interesting that that's the case. But
right,
because I couldn't even go to Walmart and buy it that cheaply, and it's delivered to my house.
Right.
It's heavy, but
absolutely. And guys, I meant to announce this before we got started. Dan will be back on Wine Wednesday. He's got some stuff going on in his life, and so he just had to is very, 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 very busy, but he wants to be here and he will be back. And I'm sure he'll check questions or comments too later. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Also, let's see. I'm not sure where Cheryl and them are tonight, but they must be busy. Okay. And
I'm
I already
wondering
asked. Go ahead.
if there's any chance you could work out something with an aquarium manufacturing company to assembly line something like this and put it up for sale.
That was one of my questions is Jerry, is this, do you want, would you be upset if people bombarded you saying, can I pay you for one?
Uh, I don't have any desire to commercialize the system.
Understood.
I did it because it was a challenge and that I wanted to do it. And I wanted to show people that there's pretty easy ways to do things if they spend a little bit of time thinking about it. And I wanted to kind of popularize the automation part of it,
Absolutely.
especially with dwarfs. Dwarfs are, as you know, pretty hard to raise. And most people, they die within 2 or 3 months probably.
Absolutely. Someone, I think it was Mermaid's Reef or Kim or someone, sorry guys, I'll go back, but someone said, isn't the dwarf seahorse lifespan much shorter than larger seahorses? And it absolutely is, which goes to show that Jerry's system is working well. I mean, 18 months, that's really good to be jamming on the dwarfs. And if he,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I heard Dan say one time that, you know, if they live at 18 months, then the system, whatever you're doing is working.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've got a couple of males that are from the original Seahorses that they are huge.
Oh.
They are, I'm not kidding. They're massive, and they don't mate anymore. I think they're in their senile years.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if dwarf seahorses never stop growing. They just keep getting like a shark. They never stop growing. They get bigger and bigger until they die. Because these guys, they're mammoth compared to the other seahorses. The breeding ones, they're lots bigger.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They're fat because they eat a lot all day long.
Yeah. Well,
the biggest that any of mine ever got when they were around the 2-year mark, the biggest ones were about 1 3/8 inches, maybe just a little bit closer to the 1.5.
Okay.
But
these guys are at least 2 inches long.
After about a year, they'd stop producing.
Yeah.
Did you hear him though, Ray? He said his are like 2 inches long. Wow.
Yeah. No, I never got that big.
They're big.
Well, I bet your automated feeding is helping them, eat more than even. And Ray is a stickler for, you got to feed the large seahorses 4 times a day, and you got to, feed the dwarfs. And he is huge about feeding, so I bet this automated system has something to do with it. But I will also agree. Yeah, Kim says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Yeah, I agree. But I will agree with your first premise that they keep growing until it's their time, because my big purple guy, who I no longer have, he outlived himself. He lived his age, whatever you want to say. But my big purplish colored seahorse, I'm telling you, people think I'm exaggerating. He was like very close to 12 inches. I mean, he was huge. Wow. And anyways, okay, off track. All right. Let's see. Okay, I did get confused. And 2 things real quick. Ray agreed. I will start researching and try. I keep doing this because I got my nails done, you guys. Totally off subject, but aren't they pretty? Okay, back to the topic. Sorry. Ray, I agree.
With a hammer.
Ray, I agree. We need to get somebody to manufacture these. And I talked to Jerry before the stream about how he had an idea to do an automated feeding system for the adult seahorses using like refrigeration, etc., but that someone was already doing it, right? Have you heard anything about that?
There's a couple refrigerated systems that have, what do they call it? They put it out for pre-sales.
Kickstarter,
yeah. I don't understand all that garbage. I'm not with the modern youngsters.
Well, Kickstarters are, we have this great idea, give us money, it might happen. So it's probably good you don't.
Yeah. But the thing is, from what I've researched so far, most Kickstarters don't succeed.
Right.
They get a lot of money, but the end product doesn't end up being produced.
Right. I wish Jerry was on the team.
It's dropped.
Yeah, there's one called, it's IND Creations or something like that, and I'm on their mailing list, and it was supposed to be ready to sell last fall.
Mm,
And I don't know if COVID had anything to do with their delay. It possibly could have, but it is exactly what I was going to design and build. But so there's no point in me doing that if they're going to come through with this. And I think it's probably a winner if they can get it going, because it keeps the mysis frozen, and it puts them into little cubes. You put them in the rotating tray and it freezes them, and then it turns around and they drop into the aquarium.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't rinse them and thaw them out, but that's better than,
right.
I don't know if that's okay with you guys, you standard Seahorse people or not. I don't know.
Well,
I wouldn't want anything that didn't have rinsed mysis.
Okay.
you know what though, Ray? I kind of disagree because now I wouldn't use that on a full-time basis because I rinse my mysis, of course. But for like a vacation, that would be awesome. You know, I could handle the tank getting a little rough for a week because I could clean it when I got back, you know? Whereas I know there's other things to consider with the bacteria, but I don't know. I just, you
But
disagree?
if I was going to use something like that going away on a vacation, I would thaw,
Mm,
rinse, and quick refreeze in the appropriate size
mm,
so that it's already rinsed. And if you do the process fast enough, then hopefully there wouldn't be any problem with it.
well, then,
Maybe even using a bit of peroxide in the thaw stage and rinse.
good points. And in that case, that like if someone was willing to do that, then the system would work, right? The system that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Well, we know we can do it anyway. I've got those ones that I built, the ones that are downstairs, and they work. It's just those particular ones weren't designed to last for a week or so. They were just for if I'm gonna go away for a couple days, then I can use them for that.
Gotcha. Well, I just wanted to agree if we could, anybody who watches this later, because I know a lot of people watch it after Wednesday, make sure if you have any connections with manufacturers, I'm going to hit my connections up because if we could get this built and manufactured, that'd be really, really great.
Yeah, and
More people would keep dwarfs. What?
I am happy to share any knowledge, any design details with anyone, commercial, personal. Uh,
As long
I
as you
don't,
don't have to build it yourself.
I don't want to do that at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
I could build a couple of prototypes for some people, but I don't want to get into the mass manufacturing.
Yeah.
I've owned a business before. I owned a business for 12 years with 80 employees, and I'm don't think I want to do that again.
Right. No, I hear you. I hear you. And
Employees were the biggest single problem I ever had in all the years my business is going.
what was it?
Employees were
Oh.
the single biggest problem
Sure.
for all the years I was in business.
Exactly right.
Sure.
But you can't live with them. You can't live without them.
That's Dan, you know, I mean, he would love to go jump back into Seahorses, but you know, he would never say this. I'm not speaking for him. I'm giving my opinion here, but you know, it's like he can't do it all now that Abby's not around, and he doesn't really. Nobody else does it as good as him. So, you know, employees. Yeah. Okay.
I
Anyways,
think it would be possible to automate some functions of a large breeder,
mhm,
but probably be difficult. And being there every day is really what you have to do, I think, in a situation like that, because
Sure.
you could lose your whole
right.
stock easily if something happens with your automation system. Because as rocket scientists find out, it's the things you don't think about that really can get you.
Yep.
I mean, you can think about almost every failure mode, but boy, if you miss one.
Well, that's
What do you
why I
do for
appreciate.
fire?
Sorry, that's why I appreciate so much that people like you who do this just because you want to find the best way and automate it and make it easier, that you are willing to share your information and your ideas because it will make a huge difference,
Yeah.
to keeping dwarfs. And I just
Yeah,
wanted to mention that you said, you don't think that self-cleaning tanks are on the horizon, but I'm going to say, screw that, I want it. I need a self-cleaning tank, dang it. But what, Jerry? Sorry.
Well, I think you can clean the bottom and things like that, but just cleaning the sides and cleaning the plants and all that. I don't see a way to do that.
Right.
And you can fill it
Yeah.
full of hydrogen peroxide and not have any algae grow and not have any any slime grow, but I'm not for the real sterile water thing either, because
Right.
I don't think that's a natural environment.
Yep.
So
I was going to ask you that too. I know you mentioned you have to clean the plants, and so obviously you have plants in there, fake plants. Do you have anything besides fake plants in the actual dwarf front part?
no, I don't want to deal with diseases
Yeah.
and ciliates and hydroids and just all of that stuff. The only other creature I have in there is a little pipefish.
No kidding.
Yeah, just he's about 3 inches long, and it's hilarious sometimes because they'll hook onto him. You know, 3 or 4 dwarfs hooked onto this pipefish, and the pipefish will get upset and he'll take off across the tank with 3 seahorses riding like a bucking bronco all the way across the tank.
Okay, I have a serious. I was laughing, but this is a sincere request, and I'm doing a little quick shout out here too, guys. We're working on finalizing a design for the Seahorse and Pipefish events at MACNA. All right. And so I've got 2 different people designing things for me that we're trying to pick between. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is, first of all, I want y'all to know, make sure when I get the event for Seahorses and Pipefish posted that you get signed up and registered right away. But also that one of the designers literally said, why not have seahorses riding a pipefish? So if you get a picture of that, I need that picture really badly. Joanne, if you're watching. Okay, back to the.
If I see it again, I will try.
Okay.
Doesn't happen that often. But.
I hear you. Okay, I know I'm jumping around, guys, but I just was writing questions. So the materials, someday we hope you'll write that out, but you did cover it. So just where you watch this video, or we will provide the link. Ray already tried to provide the link, but I will make sure it's in the description before I go to bed tonight.
If you look at the link and you look at all the pictures, you can pretty much figure out pretty much everything.
Gotcha.
But I would be happy to provide any information to anyone.
Yes, folks, he's in Seahorse Sources group also. So if you do a post.
I am not.
You're not?
No, I am not.
Oh, you're
Ray
not.
is.
Oh,
Is that the Facebook group?
yeah.
I think those, I saw it the other day. I think I should probably join it.
Oh, I'm getting you in. I thought you were. I'm so sorry. Okay, well, he will be in Seahorse Sources group, y'all, because I'm gonna get him in there. I'm gonna bug him until he comes. But either way, Jerry, are you easy? I don't want to put you on the spot here. Are you? The reason I mentioned Seahorse Sources group is because someone could post in there and just say @Jerry, and then not have your, like hit you up on your personal stuff. Would you prefer that way, or are you okay with saying hit me up? Or?
Facebook on Seahorse Sources, probably fine.
Okay, so he'll be in Seahorse Source, just @Jerry, and even if it's not the right Jerry, he's going to see it. we'll get you connected with him if you have exact questions like about building this DIY type situation, because I know I have more questions. I just don't want to keep Jerry all night. But the sieve thing, you said that's probably the most complicated, right?
The servo and the sieve. Yeah, because there's a program that you've got to program the Arduino.
Yeah.
But it's not hard at all if you've got any programming experience. I guess you probably need some programming experience.
Well, I have about this much, so maybe I'll hit.
Yeah, same here. It's a little over my head.
Well, what I was going to say was, though.
Where would you find those kind of things? Like servos and the little electronic stuff you use?
Everything was bought on Amazon.
Okay, you just have to know what you're looking for. Sounds like.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm foreseeing. I'm foreseeing bugging Jerry on a different day that's not Wednesday and asking him if he can do a private Zoom with me to like walk me through it. Maybe I'll buy the products and try to build it, and video it. That's what I'm thinking. But we'll see. I'm not asking you now. Don't say no yet.
The other thing I could do is I'm probably going to build another tank. Maybe I've got a couple of ideas to make it a little bit better. So I'll either keep this tank or get rid of it. I don't want really more than one tank.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I don't want that many tanks around, but one is enough. I got a freshwater tank and I have a saltwater tank. Don't have any other saltwater fish. This was my first venture into saltwater from freshwater. And it was interesting because of all the equipment, the refractometer, just all the stuff you got to have.
Yeah.
It gets kind of, fortunately for Amazon, you can buy all that cheap stuff, and it's not as good as the pro stuff, but it does work, most of it, I found.
Absolutely.
And if it goes bad, you can just buy it again.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I love DIY. I love when people figure out how to do something like this. I mean, and we're grateful for people like you that do jump into this. And I don't care if you've been in this, you know, working with Seahorses for 2 months. You're figuring things out. You're working with the pros like Ray. I mean, this is awesome. So
You know, the doser pump, you can buy pro units that cost $300, $400, $500. The J-Bow from China
mhm,
is $60 for a 4-channel system. And if it goes bad, you buy another one.
right.
And you can buy the little replacement osmotic pumps on the front
Yep.
because they go bad after about 6, 8 months. And they just pop right off. You pop them on, you put the hoses back on, you're done.
Done. I wanted to give you a lot of credit too for bringing up the very valid point that a lot of people want to have a Seahorse tank, and especially if you're talking about dwarfs. The one reason that I didn't ever do dwarfs is because of the constant feeding. Jerry has
Mhm.
literally shown us how to make that much easier. But if you want to do seahorses, if you want to do any kind of specialty fish, I mean even a reef, think about it, guys. You have to care about setting up the tank properly. We at this, you know, with Seahorse people harp on this all the time, but I'm just so glad that you said it too, Jerry. If you're looking at building a Seahorse tank, any kind, and you don't think that you're going to have to spend money to make it function properly, well, then you probably shouldn't even be in saltwater at all because these tanks, you know, if you set them up right, your fish live, things go well. You know, you have to replace stuff once in a while, but that original setup is so important. And I see so many people, you know, try to throw a pair of Seahorses in a too small tank with no real filtration, and then they fail and give everything a bad
Yeah.
name. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. Thank you
Yeah.
for making that point. I don't think $500 is it in any way extreme for building a dwarf tank at all. Sure, if you want to do the maintenance and, you know, constant cleaning, or I know a lot of people that do tank transfer, all those things work. But if you're lazy like me and you want to keep dwarfs, this is perfect. And I would definitely, if I was to do a dwarf tank at any point in the future, I would use this system and spend the money to do it. Okay. The only other question I had, because you talked about vacuuming the front and the back, I wrote it before you said it. And the only other question I had was, where did it go? I saw it and then I lost it. Hang on, give me 1 second, you guys. You talked extensively about the. I was writing notes and then you'd answer the question. So I had some questions about enrichment, but you covered them. Oh, and I just wanted to verify that I heard you correctly. So you said the way that you overcome that is that you mix salt water, serialized salt water, something like that.
The spoilage
Saturated.
with the enrichment, right?
Right.
The spoilage of the enrichment. Okay. When you put it in the blender, you don't use water, distilled water. You don't use seawater. You use brine that's saturated with salt. So there's essentially no free water in there. It dehydrates everything it touches. So it even works. Ray and I have been through a little experiment. I took some frozen mysis and I put it in 100% saturated brine, and I let it sit on the shelf for about 2 weeks, and it didn't smell. So I think that is a possibility. The only problem we came up with is, so if you take those mysis out and feed them to the seahorses, they're saturated with salt, a lot of salt. And your seahorses, they can probably eliminate that salt, but taking a chance on an expensive standard seahorse, feeding them a really salty mysis, they might spit it out too. They might say,
Right.
this doesn't taste like, I don't know if they can taste or not, but they can feel texture and stuff like that, I'm sure.
Oh,
But we weren't, I think Ray would say he would not be willing to take the chance on doing that. And I agree with that. So I would have to develop a feeder that took the frozen or the preserved with brine, put them into a rinse tank, stored them in the rinse tank so they could rehydrate with lower salt water, and then dump them into the standard Seahorse tank. And I do have a drawing of something like that uses 1 valve and 3 small pumps and 3 containers to actually do that.
he's a
I
genius,
don't know.
y'all. We need to hit him up for these ideas.
I don't know if it would work or not, but it's on paper at this point.
Uh-huh.
And I have toyed with the idea of getting some standard Seahorses. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not.
Well, we hope you will. And that was my final question before I jump to a few questions in the comment section. I do see them, guys. I'm getting ready to ask them. But my final question was, can you just either repeat or go into a little bit more detail. When you were talking about using salinity, like you were talking about using, I think it was, I'm sorry, my notes are, I'm a little jumbled, but you were talking about using lower or higher salinity. And I was wondering how that affects the main tank, how you stop it from affecting the main tank. Did that make sense?
It's just the rear tank that is a higher salinity.
Okay.
There is no water that goes from the rear tank to the front tank. So it goes down the overflow,
Okay.
the high salinity water.
That answered it. I just wanted to make sure that I got it because when you were saying it, I was like, oh my gosh, what if it, but you, okay. I was taking notes as you were talking and I got too many things that you already
I
answered.
stopped doing that 3 weeks ago and experiment with the hydrogen peroxide. So the salinity of the front and the rear compartment will be the same
Now,
after a while.
okay.
Because the front water overflows into the back.
Awesome. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Sorry. Okay, so let's see. Someone on Facebook asked, "Is it possible to get a parts list?" He doesn't have a parts list ready, but we're gonna bug him and hope that he'll make one. But
yeah,
if
they could contact me directly off Facebook, maybe on your Seahorse source, and I will. If there's if one person is interested, I will get the parts. In fact, I do have a parts list. I do have a parts list because I totaled up the prices on all of them. So I guess I do have a part. I forgot it was so long ago I made that, but I do have a parts list.
all right, well, after we get you into Seahorse Sources group, please just do a post, and I'll talk to you later about it. But yes, so apparently we have a parts list. Yay! And let's see, Dylan, you said, "Truth be told, this weekend." Okay, I'll read it anyways. "Truth be told, this week in my 9-gallon freshwater mini tank, my heater broke. I got to buy a new one. LOL, equipment fails are common in this hobby." Absolutely. All right, let me go back and see. Holly, if you have any other questions, or Ray, if you have anything you want to point out while I'm searching these to see any questions, feel free. Or not. Ray, what else? Go ahead, Holly.
I'd like to look at the plans, like you said, the link, because I was reading it as you were going over it. It is pretty detailed. So yeah, I liked that. I'd have to check that out.
Yeah, and I update that document since it's a linked document. And so if I make changes to it, and I could make that document, the parts list on there, I could make drawings, I could put templates on there. If, I'm willing to do that kind of work. I just don't want to get into the manufacturing of it. And I don't want any credit or copyright or anything. If somebody wants to take this and make it commercial, more power to them.
Well, I think they should give you credit. That's just my opinion. But when
I don't care about that.
You're awesome. I mean, I just love people like you, and we thank you so much from every person in the hobby, because it's people like you that make the difference. And when you do join Seahorse Sources group, if you want, I'd be happy to put your file in the file system on the group so that people could easily find it without. I mean, obviously it would link to your post too, but it's
better to put the link in there and then it goes straight to my Google Drive. And if I update anything or add things, they've always got a live copy of it.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I'll put the link in the file section. That's what I meant. Sorry.
That link will still be good, so you can use that same link.
Okay, very good. And then Mermaid's Reef asked a while back, wonder if a dosing pump, a mini fridge, and the Reef Nutrition liquid mysis would work for vacation for the big guys. You said you had a drawing, and we've talked about how other people are designing some ideas. What do you guys think about that? Mini fridge, Reef Nutrition, liquid mysis, and a dosing pump.
I think that with the proper safeguards and things, I think that probably would work. I'd have to see, I think that it'd be big probably. You've got a mini fridge, and you can get some small refrigerators, but the one that people should look at, it's called IND. It's on Kickstarter. They should look at that because it's really pretty cool.
Yep.
I mean, it's got a thermoelectric module in it for the freezer, and so it's really small. And if it works, I think it's great. But I don't know if it's going to work for your standard Seahorses, but it's not going to work for the Dwarves because they won't touch anything that doesn't twitch.
Right. I'm definitely going to check it out as soon as we're done here, and I'll try to link it, guys, if I get it done. I will link it. But yeah, because in the comments people were saying that too, that too bad mysids are cannibalistic. That would make this hard to copy for the big guys. Yeah, I can't see this working at all for live mysids, but some sort of system that is able to figure out the, rinsing. That's a big catch with us, but I'm going to check it out. I'll let you guys know what I think in the
I
comment
put it
section.
in the YouTube.
Huh?
I put the link in the YouTube.
Good, thank you, Ray. And Kim said, "Oh my gosh, you would make so much money creating this for the big guys." He's been so clear, guys. He's in this for the love of the hobby and the seahorses. So he just gotta hit him up and try to do it yourself and find a manufacturer that's willing to do it. All right.
As
Well,
for
one thing,
making money, you'd have to be able to build it pretty cheap to be able to sell it for 500 and make a lot of money.
yeah, that was a cost of 500. You'd have to sell it for probably 750 to make any money.
Which sounds like a
But
lot.
anybody that was doing it commercially, they would probably look at trying to get maybe better parts,
Yep.
but mass purchases get
Sure.
the price down
Yep.
for individual parts.
Yeah, economies of scale might work out, but I just don't know what the market is for dwarfs, and I'm kind of afraid that they might make them illegal to own at some point in the future.
Right.
I don't know how that's going.
And the situation in Hawaii, which has nothing to do with dwarfs, but I hear you, there's fear for sure about what's going to happen in any
If we
CITES
could-
regulations. Go ahead.
If we could take the pressure off of the fresh caught or the wild caught seahorses by having cultivated ones like Alyssa does, and that I think that's the way to go. That's kind of what inspired me to do this.
Mhm.
I read 2 or 3 books on how to raise seahorses. I still made a lot of mistakes early on, but I think that taking the pressure off the wild caught would maybe think the environmentalists wouldn't put so much pressure on it if we say that maybe make it not legal to go out and get them. I don't know.
Absolutely. That's that. And Dan, Seahorse Source, and Alyssa actually worked together at one point. I mean, not work together, but I mean, they're friends. We'll put it that way. They share stuff to, help each other. And I absolutely agree with you. And because we started doing Wine Wednesday and we have groups like Seahorse Sources group and Dan and, sharing and you sharing and Ray, everybody sharing on things like the group in Wine Wednesday, more people are succeeding. Holly is an up and coming breeder of the larger Erectus because she, has learned so much from this collective group on how to succeed. So we're absolutely in agreement. Captive bred is the way to go. Dwarf seahorses, unfortunately, I know Alyssa had them at one point. In fact, did you get your dwarf seahorses from Alyssa?
Yeah, she still has them.
Oh, she does. Okay, awesome. I just know that they're not a big, because they don't go for much money, and the care is the same or even more than the bigger seahorses that go for much more. Like you were saying earlier, $250 could buy you 10 seahorses. I don't know where you live because $250 costs, 2
That's
seahorses.
the dwarf seahorse. That's the dwarf seahorse.
Right. See, that's
That's
my point. And you're right. And that's my point though, is that because they are so much less expensive, it's hard for a breeder to put in that time, energy, and money to get out of it. But
I woke up kind of, I guess, in the middle of the night, and I said, the way to commercialize this whole thing is to sell the seahorse tank. It doesn't even have to be the automated one. It can be just one with all the equipment, with the hatcheries for the shrimp and everything. Sell the tank and then give the seahorses away free.
Yep.
And make money on your equipment.
I love it. We need to talk to Alyssa, looks like, because no, that's genius. I mean, I know people have tried that before, but they were selling tanks that weren't adequate. Like I know they did that with clownfish. They'd sell, you don't have to do anything. This is the full experience. But then it was like a 20-gallon tank, and it just wasn't good. So with dwarfs, it's different, obviously, not to get into that. But I think that's genius, and we're going to hit some people up because I think that's really, really smart. All right, I forgot where I was going with all that, but let me see. Guys, did I miss any other questions? I know there were some, but I think he answered them as we went. And if I missed your question, please go ahead. And somebody said, go to Shark Tank. Not on your life, yo. They are mean. But if anybody asked a question that I missed, please just ask it again. Or the LOL was to see Kelly build. Hey, Kim, what are you trying to say? You trying to say I couldn't pull this off? Now I'm doing it. All right. Cleaning. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. Doesn't go very well. And, right, we're talking about frozen foods. Right. Okay. If you have another question that I've missed, please ask it in the comments. Or, again, we're going to make sure, I'm going to literally invite Jerry to Seahorse Sources group as soon as we're done. Put that link in the file section and make sure that we're golden if you have any questions to ask him. And if you have any trouble, just tag me too, and I'll make sure to connect you guys because this is awesome. And Holly, you look like you had something else to say or ask. Nope.
No, I was just really impressed.
I
I just
know.
wanted to say thank you. That was pretty awesome.
Yes.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Thank you.
Well, it's
so
been
much.
2 years in the making. So
And did you
I
get,
like the idea of selling the tank and have like a coupon for the seahorses.
yeah,
Like they do some kids, kind of like sea monkeys.
yep.
you know,
Back in the day.
it's one of those situations where you buy the tank and you ship it to somebody and they put it together and they cycle it and they get it ready.
Mhm.
And when they're ready, you ship them the seahorses, and chances of them
Yeah.
succeeding are much higher than if you have somebody new with a non-cycled tank.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm seeing like with the first shipment instructions that show you how to
Yep.
cycle, since pet stores get it wrong sometimes and online information can be varied. And then, oh man, that is so genius. I love it. And then you don't get this. I could even see, if you were, I mean, manufacturers wouldn't feel this way, obviously, probably. But like if it was me that did this, which it won't be because, whatever. But if it was me, I'm really picky about, I don't want to give somebody seahorses that doesn't know how to care for them or doesn't have the tank cycled or whatever. And I would be like, okay, tell me your results. Tell me your test results. Know that they are actually testing the tank. Oh man, I love this idea. I do. Okay, sorry, I'm rambling. Ray, was there anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure Jerry shares or what? Mermaids Reef said QR codes with video tutorials. Yes, right?
Remember, I've got MCI.
What?
You remember I've got mild cognitive impairment.
I don't care. I'm still going to put you on the spot.
I can remember something from last week. I can't remember 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, but this is your baby, Ray. You've been talking about the automated dwarf tank for a long time, so.
Well, that's because I was so impressed with it, and I thought other people, even if they weren't going to get one, they would be impressed at seeing it. And then I was hoping that maybe some young whippersnapper would sit there, and that gives me some ideas on what I can do to automate a standard seahorse tank.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was one of the things I hoped would happen, is people would open their mind, and the doser pumps and all that stuff that you can get, and just think about trying to make things easier and make the fish happier.
So you heard it here first, guys.
Take a young
Sorry.
engineer.
Exactly. And you heard it here first, guys. If you're that person, if you're that whippersnapper, I love you, Ray. If you're that whippersnapper in the audience and you have an idea based on what you've seen, Jerry's not only willing to, let you use what has worked for him and his ideas that he's worked 2 years on, but, I'm sure that if you had an idea and you wanted to talk to him about it, he would, give you his thoughts and advice too, and Ray and everybody here. So heck, even in the comment section, we were getting people saying, well, wow, I wonder if this would work. That's what this is all about, y'all. So cool. And I hope there's lots of whippersnappers watching. I can't get over that. I'm going to keep saying that.
Whippersnapper.
What is it?
Whippersnapper, I think it was when I was young.
Oh, excuse me. It was whippersnapper. I know my mom used to say whippersnapper for me, but whippersnipper or snapper, whatever. All right. Okay.
I do
You're a
have
little younger than I am, though.
I do have a block diagram of this whole system. I forgot I had that too. So
You know what? Yes, like as soon as we're done, Jerry, if you're able, I'm not going to let this go on much longer. I'm trying to shorten one Wednesdays. Hey guys, I'm going to say really quickly, if you had a question or a comment that had nothing to do with the automated dwarf system, this is your time. I'm starting free chat, open chat right now because I want to make sure we don't keep Jerry too long. But Jerry, when we stop the stream, hang out for just a second and I can make sure I just want to make sure that you can get this all in one place in the group if you choose to. Okay. And Dylan, you're 23. I think you count as a whippersnipper. But am I right, Ray?
Yeah, but I'm looking for someone that
Are you trying to say Dylan is not an engineer?
if he's still doing his education, he might make it.
Okay. We love you, Dylan. We're just
Out
kidding.
working already, and if he happens to get into the right kind of work, then he could still make it.
Absolutely. I was just teasing both of you. Sorry. Okay. So I think we covered everything. Someone on Facebook said that's a great idea, selling complete setups with everything hobbyists need for beginners and maybe upgraded kits for more experienced keepers. Absolutely. You're a whippersnipper, Dylan. But we'll talk about this more. I'm getting Jerry in Seahorses group, so don't worry, you'll have all this info. And I'll link to it in the comments section of the video when we're done. We so appreciate you joining us tonight. We so appreciate Jerry sharing his information. And yeah, I think that's, did you guys have any other, Holly, did you have anything to share that was non-topic related?
I do have one thing.
Please.
Maybe someone could help me out with
Yes.
real quick. I have my male Sandy, the one that's had all the babies.
Right.
He's in the hospital right now. He's in a treatment tank for internal gas bubble disease. So he's actually doing much better. He's swimming normally now. He's starting to be more alert and, kind of move around on his perch and stuff. Today is his 6th day of Furan 2.
Mm-hmm.
The Diamox just arrived, so I'm starting that tomorrow.
Okay.
Cheryl told me, go ahead and do 3 days of the Diamox and make sure he's had 10 days of the antibiotic treatment before I return him to the tank. So anyway, today I changed out the water in his 10-gallon hospital tank and put in a brand new dose of Furan 2. And he swam around a little bit. He's swimming normally now. He's not floating anymore. He's not all inflated. But he's doing something new, and I'm wondering if it's part of the healing process,
Okay.
or if this is something I need to worry more about. But about every 4th breath, it's almost like he has a hiccup. He's like, and then I did see him do a bunch of one time today when I was kind of moving stuff around. It was almost like a sneeze. He was snicking at nothing, like.
Does it look like he's coughing?
Yeah, and so I'm what if that
Ciliates.
just kind of he's healing and working stuff out, or
Might have ciliates.
okay.
So Ray, what can she do? I have the same opinion, but I want to hear yours first about what she should do.
Well, if it wasn't for the fact that he's got the internal gas bubble disease, I'd be doing a freshwater dip.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if he's stressed enough from the treatment that he would have a problem. I would see if he could contact Dan. And just find out if you can get a fast answer from him. He knows more about the interaction.
Holly, I'll call him as soon as we're not live.
Situations.
Okay. Another thing is I never saw him do that before today.
Right. I'm personally.
Treatment days. So I'm wondering if he's working, if his internal stuff is just starting to work again, and he's kind of.
Maybe, and I'm sorry that I interrupted Ray and you. Sorry again. But that I agree with Ray. That's a clear sign of something's going on with parasites or ciliates. And my only question, because I would refer to Dan also, because I've never seen a seahorse react that way during medication and extremely clean and fresh water, because you did all new water and water changes daily. So my only question is, I haven't been on Facebook much. Guys, if if you guys message me or post something on Facebook and I don't respond right away, please understand that I have twin 13-year-old daughters. And I'm like
Oh,
everyday playing teacher. Please, I'm not trying to ignore you. But anyways, the last thing I saw that you posted, which is probably days ago,
uh-huh.
is you weren't even sure. It was before you put the seahorse in treatment. Sandy, right? Sandy?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you were trying to determine if it was even GBD. You showed that it looked, the discussion was it might be an injury. So how did you,
Yeah,
so did he then blow up?
well, yeah, what
Okay,
happened was he healed from whatever the injury was,
okay,
saying he was fine for a couple days,
okay.
went back to normal, and then all of a sudden one day he was blown up like a balloon, his whole body,
That's internal.
and he was having trouble swimming, so then it was obvious. The only thing I had on hand was Furan too.
Right.
So I put him in that, and he started healing up,
He did. Okay.
immediately. He started getting better. So
Nice.
so today he was pretty much, it's day 6 of the Furan 2. And today he's pretty much back to normal, other than now that he started moving around more. I noticed him doing that and I only saw him do it once with the like sneeze thing.
Yep.
And it was not long after he swam around,
So
which he hadn't been swimming until today.
good. That's good news. So wait, does he do?
And he's not floating anymore. He's looking normal.
You're doing the right thing. So
So I start the Diamox tomorrow.
nice. And my question is, does he do the coughing when can he eat properly? Can he suck down the whole food? You see the mastication?
I think he can. He hasn't been eating, but I think it's because he's kind of scared and shy in that tank, because he can move his mouth and he's snicked, but not at food.
How
Okay.
long has he not been
When
eating?
he did that snicking thing I was talking about earlier, it was like just real quick snicks at nothing, and he only did it once all day.
What'd you say, Ray?
How
But
long has he
when
not
he's
been eating?
There's it's almost like like he has hiccups.
Yeah, no, I know
And that
exactly.
was ever since he had the swim.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, but
Do you think it's maybe a neurological issue from the antibiotic?
what I was going to say is that seahorses often eat less or don't eat like you want them to when they're in the antibiotic. But I personally don't think that this reaction is due to the antibiotic. Ray, thoughts?
No, I wanted to know how long has he not eaten for? Like in my experience, if they go 4 or 5 days without eating, I never can get them to eat after that.
It's been longer than that. I want to say today was day 6, so it's been 6 days at least.
And he's not eating at
Now-
all?
Count the number of mice that you put in the tank tomorrow,
Mhm.
and then see how many. See if they're still all there at the end of the day or the next morning.
Mhm.
Because if he's not eating at all, you're going to have to tube feed.
Well,
And I got the stuff to tube feed him, but he looks really good. So I'm not
Well, I've been
worried
through
about it too much yet. But he's been interested in the food. He's been looking at it.
well,
But-
I really, really, really like Ray's idea of, I know it's a pain in the butt, but just for like one feeding, just to get an idea, like literally at thought and count out 10 or 5 or whatever. And
You have to make sure that there isn't anything in the tank to begin with.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah,
And we will hit Dan up, but I agree with what Ray said. This sounds like ciliates. That's surprising in a tank where it's all fresh water.
Well,
And
there's always going to be ciliates around.
I know,
It's
but she's doing
gonna come-
50% water changes daily.
Yeah, but the thing is, when the horse is stressed,
Right,
it's got this
Right.
gas bubble disease. It's going through treatment.
right.
I'm taken out of his display tank. It's into the hospital tank.
Right.
And with everything there, the immune system has to be compromised.
You're right.
And so the ciliates then can multiply.
Right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Absolutely right. And my only other question is, right, because this is something I'm not positive about. Because
Well, I'm not even positive that it's ciliates. It's just
right.
the first thing that comes to mind.
It could be neurological, like Jerry said. And this is such an important topic, but I want to make sure I get to talk to Jerry after the stream. But anyways, and we will call Dan, and if he's busy, I will make sure personally that I get with him and make sure he gets with you. But
And I did put a video. I posted it on my Facebook page.
okay, I'll go look. And
And I tagged Cheryl in it because she was helping me earlier.
yes, and my only question though was, Ray, when I have treated for GVD, it was never internal, so I'm a little, that's why we need Dan, because I don't know anything about internal. Mine was always bubbles on the tail or whatever. And when I've treated for bacterial issues, of course, that was different too. And I'm honestly kind of gladly surprised that Furon 2 has said had such a good effect on Sandy for internal GVD. It makes sense, but yet I'm still shocked. Anyways,
If you think about it, there's many times
Me
Dan
too.
says that just putting them in new
new water, right,
even without treatment, sometimes will turn it around.
right. That's why I'm kind of wanting to ask him if maybe the Furon 2 was a mistake. However,
Here's something Cheryl just answered me back a little bit ago.
Okay.
And her take on it, because she saw the video, and she says he could have ingested a mysis and it didn't go all the way down. It's hard to say for sure. Let's see if he's still doing it in the morning.
yes, and as long as
He did start kind of snicking at stuff when he started moving. So maybe he did eat a little bit, and maybe.
So wait, has he been doing the coughing for days or just today?
No. Like I was saying, I only saw him do it today.
Okay.
After he started moving around, because I cleaned the tank, I put him in a bucket, and I did 100% water change and put a brand new packet of Furan 2.
Okay.
Because I've been following the Furan 2 directions and doing 25% water change in a new packet of Furan 2.
Yep.
But today was the 6th day, so I cleaned everything. And he hadn't tried swimming yet. He had been clinging to his perch all the time. So today when I put him in the tank, I wanted to see if he would swim, to see if he was better. And he swam completely normally.
Well, you know what? I'm going to back up.
Normally, but afterwards, he had a little food in there, and then I noticed him doing that thing. And I'm like, oh, does he have something else wrong, or is this just part of what's already wrong?
Well, I'm going to say,
count the food pieces you put in then.
well, I'm going to say personally, people might jump me for even saying this, and I'm sorry to anybody who's smarter than me, but bottom line is I personally have seen a seahorse do that action just due to stress. So it typically indicates ciliates or something like that, but I'm not absolutely convinced that, and neither is Ray, convinced that that's absolutely what the problem is. So we're going to investigate further. And my question to Ray was, I've never treated with Furon 2 and Dimox in the same tank. Do you know if there's any problem with that?
I have.
You have. Okay, then there's not.
Cheryl told me go ahead and do it.
Then you're good.
I'm more concerned with the not eating than this cough or hiccup or whatever it is.
Because the reason I'm asking, honestly, too, is because I do know that Dimox makes them not want to eat. So we're gonna investigate this further after the stream, and we will update you next week for sure. Holly, remind me you're gonna go first next week, and share any updates because we do care. And we want to know what happens with Sandy, and we want to help. But instead of sitting here hashing out ideas, we'll investigate further. Maybe get Cheryl in here next week too, and discuss what we discovered, because I have some ideas too, but I don't want to just spout off. So anyhow, thank you for sharing, Holly. And we're gonna come back I'm gonna talk to you after the stream, but we're gonna come back next week and share what we figured out. And I can't tell you ever since I saw that post, I'm like, please, 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 every way I could please and pray and everything, because I know how important Sandy is, and he does matter. So
Yeah, no, he's actually, other than that, he's doing really well now.
I'm so
But
glad.
he looked really bad. I didn't think he was going to make it. I tried to do a pouch evacuation because he had little bubbles coming out of his pouch,
Oh,
and it was actually kind of prolapsed.
oh my gosh.
And it's no longer, he's healed.
Ah,
He looks fine. He looks fine, and he swims fine now. So it did work. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give him the Diamox too.
you know what's
And
amazing to me is that
hopefully we'll go home Monday, but I have to take that whole system apart tomorrow. I got sand because I had crushed coral mixed with sand. And that tank's been set up for 3 years. So I think that's the problem.
I agree.
Is that crushed coral is holding the bacteria.
Yep.
So I've got to tear it apart and redo it tomorrow. And that way, when he goes home,
Yep.
he'll have a clean, fresh, healthy tank to go back to. And hopefully nobody else gets sick in the meantime.
What I think is so cool, though, is that someone like you, who's amazing. We love you, Holly. But I'm just saying, someone like you who enters the hobby, you're able to get these answers and figure out how to breed and figure out how to, like, that situation that you just described 20 years ago, there would be no hope. 10 years ago, there would be hardly any hope. You know, I mean, people were just getting lucky because the information that these groups share, that, you know, experts share, that people like Jerry who are sharing their ideas share, they're really helping people succeed. And it's amazing. And Holly, you sharing your experience is helping people succeed. So,
well, and I had the same experience as Jerry. I bought dwarves years ago,
Yep.
and they lasted about 3 weeks.
Yep, exactly. Look how far we've come. But
yeah.
Anyhow, I gotta leave now, so
okay,
I just want to thank again, Jerry, for your great presentation. I couldn't have done either the design or the presentation. But good night all, and we'll talk to you again next week.
good night,
Good
Ray.
night, Ray. Thanks for the help.
And actually, folks, while we're gonna jump into Holly's situation as soon as we come back next week, but I am gonna call it for the night because the glass is almost empty, and I want to make sure Jerry doesn't run off before I get to ask him and get him in Seahorse Source Group. So thank you so much for everyone joining us. Thank you greatly to Jerry for sharing the idea. Thank you for Holly for sharing your situation. So thank you all. You guys say good night first.
Good night.
Jerry, say bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. We'll see you next week. Cheers.